Sheck Exley was born on the 1st of April 1949. He began diving at the age of 16 and instantly fell in love with the extreme sport, a love that he would carry with him for the rest of his life. To some people, Sheck was a timid, soft-spoken high school algebra teacher at Suwannee High School in Live Oak, Florida. To most, he was considered the world's greatest cave diver and the best to have ever done it. It took him only 7 years from when he was 16 to become the first person to log 1,000 cave dives. This wasn't uncommon for him to break records. If you look at any of the record books, Exley's name is bound to appear frequently. Exley explored and surveyed most of the well-known deep-water cave systems over the next 3 decades that followed. He pioneered many of the fundamental cave diving procedures, tactics, and equipment in the process. This includes standardizing the usage of the octopus, a backup second stage diving regulator that can be utilized if the diver's primary second stage regulator fails. This is now considered by almost all scuba divers, whether caving or diving in open water, to be essential. He also introduced trimix to diving. Trimix is a breathing gas made up of oxygen, helium, and nitrogen that is used in deep commercial diving as well as during the deep phase of technical diving dives. Trimix diving helps to reduce exposure to high oxygen partial pressures. Exley was equally famous for his expertise on diving and his perpetual knowledge in the subject. Due to this, he was elected the chairman of the National Speleological Society's cave diving section on February 6, 1974. He then went on to write 2 major books on the subject: Basic Cave Diving, A Blueprint for Survival, and Caverns Measureless to Man, which were published by Cave Books. This brings us to September 1994. For the past year, Exley and his diving partner Jim Bowden have been focusing their efforts on a freshwater cenote called Zatacon in the state of Tamaulipas, Mexico. A cenote is a natural pit or sinkhole formed when limestone bedrock collapses, exposing groundwater. Zatacon was known to be at least 1,080 feet deep. Following some dives in the cenote by the team, they announced they had encountered no pressure related problems, and the furthest they had gone in the cenote was 774 feet. Exley wanted to dive 1,000 feet. Not only did 1,000 feet have a nice ring to it, 1,000 feet would be a significant achievement, one that would be required if someone were to ever reach the bottom of Zatacon. After months of planning, Jim Bowden and Sheck Exley dove into the water of the Zatacon on April 6, 1994 to complete the 1,000-foot descent. Despite the fact that solitary cave diving is the norm for these kind of dives, Bowden and Exley dove at the same time, following differently weighted lines 25 to 30 feet apart, but still essentially alone in the murky water due to the visibility being very low. The inert gases in their breathing mixtures will be quickly absorbed into their bloodstreams at these depths. Until the divers return to the surface, water pressure will keep the gases compressed in the form of small, harmless bubbles. Ascending too quickly can be fatal. To avoid this, Exley and Bowden would slowly rise to the surface after striking the bottom, making decompression stops at predetermined depths for specific durations of time, allowing the gases to gradually escape the solution. Bowden had reached 898 feet in 11 minutes, but his gas reserves were lower than intended, so he turned up to begin a 9-hour decompression. Their team had been waiting in the water high up, watching the 2 streams of bubbles. However, she saw that the bubbles coming from Exley had stopped 18 minutes into the dive. Exley had stopped breathing. Exley's death could not be determined. It was anticipated that Exley's body would never be found after the accident. Exley, no matter what happened, did not panic, according to those who knew him well. 3 days after the dive, when the guideline was removed from the cave, to their surprise, his body came up with it. The line had been wrapped around his arm. They believe he did this in anticipation of his death. Sheck's team would later release that the most likely sequence of events was that Exley got behind on his gas management, ran low on bottom gas, and could not control his buoyancy, so could not ascend. His dive computer showed a maximum depth of 879 feet. It was unclear if he had gone further. Sheck was only 45 when he had died, but he died being known as the greatest cave diver to ever do it. Although this is tragic, his findings and achievements will forever live on in the diving world. Sheck's diving partner said, "I still feel a terrific sense of loss because I enjoyed his company, his passion and his craft. It is my loss. However, I believe that he was never more alive than in those moments of trial in that space. It is easy to die, but it is very hard to live." Sheck met life head on with few misconceptions. Only death deceived him, as it eventually does us all. Sheck took little advantage of his fame. He was a modest individual, a gentleman, respectful of his colleagues and fellow cave explorers, both wet and dry. It is an unfortunate truth that the greater your accomplishments, the greater the opposition and animosity. Still, I cannot remember him ever saying a bad word about anyone. Perhaps the greatest compliment to an individual's lifetime of accomplishments is the respect of his peers. The best diving champions in the world still mourn Sheck. Sheck still dives with me on every dive I make. He is discussed around the campfire as if he was still here. Sheck said one night in our camp in Mexico that the greatest compliment to a teacher is to have his students go on to surpass all the teacher's accomplishments, to go to greater heights in life, and I would suppose to greater depths.